In this lesson, we are covering budgets. Again, a very common word, something that's used very much in every company or in every professional field that you are part of. It's something that is widely used. So let's understand what actual budgets are. What do budgets mean? What is the management accounting thought behind budgets? First and foremost, purposes for budgets need to be cleared. Why do we create a budget? And even before that, let me just simply introduce what budgets mean. Now, a budget means any kind of amount, any kind of money that is set aside for a particular task at the beginning of the year. So managers know that I have this much to spend and I have this much to use to complete my job and to deliver back to the business. In simple terms, that's what budgets mean. And what are the purposes of budgeting? Why do we create these budgets? Most important is for planning. So budgeting forces the managers to look ahead. If they don't have a predetermined amount or set targets, then they will not anticipate problems. They will not look to find solutions. They will not look to improve. So budgeting helps with planning. It also helps with control and evaluation. How much each manager used, how each manager performed can be evaluated. Budgeting helps with coordination as well, with motivation as well, and it helps with authorization as well, which means budgets can act as a formal authorization to a manager for expenditure or for hiring staff. The manager can say, I have been awarded this much budget, I'm spending it under these categories. So budgets are rather created to help managers plan, coordinate, motivate, and authorize their transactions. These are the major purposes of budgeting that we are speaking about. But it's also important to remember that the objectives of budgeting are not always met. There are a few roadblocks even when you create budgets. So preparing these budgets takes a whole lot of time, effort, and hence money. It's something that really needs to be thought about, procrastinated about, because if a wrong budget is set, it can completely throw off a manager in terms of motivation, in terms of commitment. So it should be an equal balance between the benefit we are going to get from that budget and the time we are spending to make that budget. Secondly, budgets are always predictions about the future. You're always trying to forecast the future. That may not really occur, right? The future is something which is uncertain. What if you plan for a certain budget, plan for a certain activity, but something happens which is out of your control and you cannot, sit within the budget that is set? It does happen, right? So sometimes budgeting is a very arbitrary activity because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So giving you both sides here, what budgeting means first, second, why we use budgets, the purpose of budgeting, and third, what if the budget objectives are not met? The disadvantages of budgeting have also been explained here. Now we speak about a new concept, or rather an innovative concept that has come up because of this modern changing global environment, and that is stress testing. In simple English as well, stress means something that is worrying you, something that is giving you anxiety, making you think, or putting you in a worrying situation. From the budgeting perspective, it means putting the budget through various difficult scenarios to see how it performs. In a very simple way, stress test means how a budget would perform or function under severe or unexpected pressure, which means if something happens which is not planned for, how will the budget react? For example, it may test the budget to examine the consequences of the loss of a major customer. Today he's buying from you, tomorrow he stops. There is a major dip in the economy. Anything can happen, right? So are we prepared for that? Will our budgets be able to cope? Will my company be able to cope? That is what is stress testing. That's simple as that. And the need of the hour is stress testing because businesses are less and less predictable. There is so much changing every day that stress testing has become vital and has become important for many organizations. So this is something that you have been now introduced as part of this Skillshare lesson, and I'm sure that you will be able to make good discussions when a topic on stress testing or budgeting comes up for that matter. We spoke about the concept of budgeting, we spoke about the advantages of budgeting, the disadvantages of budgeting, we spoke about stress testing. We're now coming to the different types of budgets that you can create, that your company can create, that your manager can ask you to create. First, your company may follow the periodic budget rule, which means this is a simple budget that shows costs and revenues for one period, which means it can be for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, and it's updated on a periodic basis. Generally, it's quarterly. So every 4 months, you create a budget, and that's how you create a budget 3 times in 1 year to complete your periods. It can be a periodic budget, as I mentioned. Secondly, it can be a rolling or a continuous budget, which means from one accounting period to another accounting period. It could be 1st Jan to the 31st of December. It could be the 1st of April to the 31st of March, depends on what accounting period your business is following. After one accounting period is over, you create the budget for another accounting period. That is your rolling or continuous budgets. So first is periodic budget, quarterly. Next, rolling budget, yearly. Next, you have incremental budgeting. Over here, you just take the budget of the previous year, add a small percentage for inflation or allowing for cost increases, and then use the same budget that you did last year. So this is a method where you are simply picking up last year's budget, making small adjustments in the budget and using it for the current year, adding increments. So it's incremental budgeting. You don't make the entire budget again. Fourth is the most innovative method, which is zero-based budgeting, which means it is a method of budgeting where all activities are re-evaluated each time a budget is formulated. For one period is over, one period is completely over. In the next period, you will have nothing to do with this historic budget. You will start evaluating each activity from zero. So no historical numbers or amounts to be taken into consideration. You only look forward. It's the complete opposite of incremental budgeting that we spoke about. So types of budgets, we discussed periodic budgeting, rolling or continuous budgets, incremental budgeting, and the complete opposite, which is zero-based budgeting. Now, any kind of budget that you make, any method that you are following, the level of participation of your employees is a question and is a decision that needs to be made. First, you can have an imposed style of budgeting, which means you can set the budget, the higher authorities can set the budget and then just give it to the managers to follow it. That is the imposed style. On the other hand, you have the participative style, which means everybody sits together, discusses, and comes up with a budget. Obviously, this looks more motivating, but the imposed style has its own advantages because the people who are running the business at the top will have a better idea, will have a better exposure. So they will be able to control stuff better. So both have advantages, disadvantages, like I briefly spoke about. So it's a decision that will be open for any company to take as to which method they want to follow. After this brief lesson, I'm sure you have a better idea, understanding what budgeting actually is and what are the different styles, types of budgets.